They rang my doorbell like they were serving papers. Sharp, repeated, angry. I watched the security feed for a full 5 seconds before opening the door long enough to remember my mother's voice on the phone long enough to taste the word understand again. Your sister is bringing her boyfriend to meet the family. She doesn't want you there. Your blue-collar job would embarrass her. Understand, I'd said. And I meant it. The door swung open. My parents stood there, flushed and rigid, me sister behind them, jaw tight, and then him, her boyfriend, hovering half a step back, eyes already searching the space like a man who knew he'd walked into the wrong room. The moment he saw me, his face drained. He said my name like a confession. I wasn't always the inconvenient sibling. He used to be the reliable one, the one who fixed things, leaky pipes, broken locks, their cars. When the check engine light came on, he learned early that praise was rare and usefulness was currency. My sister learned something else: optics. She went to college, learned the right words, dated the right men, learned how to introduce herself like some. I stayed, took the apprenticeship, learned to work with my hands, built something slow and unglamorous that actually lasted. We used to sit at the same table until image mattered more than blood. When Mom called to uninvite me, she tried to sound reasonable, like exclusion was a favor. This dinner is important, she said. I heard what she meant. You're not. I didn't argue. That surprised her. Silence always does. I hung up, went back to work, and let the absence settle. Betrayal isn't loud at first, it's quiet, administrative, a decision made without you in the room. That night, I pulled up the guest list for Thanksgiving. Out of habit, old reflex, me name wasn't there. His was. I knew him before he knew my sister. Not socially, professionally. He'd walked into my office 6 months earlier with polished shoes and a thin smile, pitching himself as a consultant who could optimize operations. He talked fast, took notes. He never reread, asked questions that showed he didn't understand the answers. I hired him anyway. Not because he was impressive, because he was desperate. And because desperate people reveal themselves quickly. The signs came in increments. A vendor calling me by his name, a proposal copied word for word from a draft I'd never sent. I'm a client, thanking him for a decision I'd made alone. I didn't confront him. He documented. Screenshots, timestamp, signed, approvals, internal log. Sigh. Let him keep digging. People like him don't stop when they're winning. They escalated. By the time my sister posted their engagement teaser, just a handshot, ring gleaming, I had a folder thick enough to end his career twice. Still, I waited. Revenge rushed is messy. I prefer clean lines. Thanksgiving came and went. He ate takeout at my desk, signed contracts, word bonuses. To my crewy, didn't miss the turkey. I missed the idea of family. But that idea had already been repossessed. 5 days later, the doorbell rang. Now. My mother found her voice first. What did you do? I hadn't said a word yet. That's how I knew the plan worked. My sister turned to him. You said you handled it. He was staring at the floret, the name stitched on my jacket, the company logo he'd memorized and hoped never to see again. I didn't know, he whispered. To her, not to me. I stepped aside and let them in. Hospitality is power. We sat. No one offered coffee. My father's hands shook, not from age, from realization. I slid my phone across the table. The email chain. The invoices. The client statements. The termination notice already signed. You stole from me, I said, calm as a ledger. Then, you used my sister to launder credibility. My sister stood. You're lying. He didn't look at her. That was the moment, the precise fracture, when loyalty switches sides without warning. The confrontation wasn't loud, didn't need to, but truth is efficient. I told them about the audit scheduled for Monday. The clients. I'd already called the non-compete. He'd violated the lawsuit. I wouldn't even need to file because his firm had already cut him loose to save themselves. I told my sister I'd known about them since October, that I'd waited anyway. Why? She asked, Because she needed to see it. Because she'd chosen image over integrity. Because exclusion cuts both ways. I didn't say that. I just said, "You didn't want me at dinner." They left in pieces. My father, first my mother, crying into her scarf. Me sister stayed behind, staring at a future that had just been reclassified as a mistake. At the door, she finally looked at me. "You could have warned me." I nodded. "You could have invited me." After they were gone, I sat alone and listened to the quiet knot, the lonely kind earned kind. Revenge didn't feel like triumphant, felt like alignment, like restoring weight to a scale that had been tilted for years. They learned something that night. About work, about value, about the cost of underestimating the wrong person. As for me, I went back to the office the next morning, put on my jacket, clocked in. Still blue collar. Still standing, and never embarrassed.